Hello, I just want to briefly discuss with you some of your rights as a parent with a student that's getting special education services through the school. You know that you receive your parental rights in a big packet, but I just want to hit some of the main points. So one thing to know is that just because your child has a diagnosis doesn't mean that they automatically are eligible for services. For them to become eligible for services, they have to be evaluated by school personnel to see if they qualify. Some of the common disabilities that are covered in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act are autism, blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, other health impairments. This can include your ADHD, orthopedic impairment, speech impairment, TBI, visual impairments, or multiple disabilities. So if your child is eligible for services, it is important for you to know that they have the right to a free and appropriate public education. To make sure this happens, our team will develop an educational plan tailored to meet your child's needs. So if you're thinking that this might be the right thing for your child, the next steps that happen, a referral comes first. Often this comes from the classroom teachers, doctors, other people that are involved in the child's life. Once that happens, there has to be a consent provided from you, the parent, for the evaluation to begin. Nothing will happen without your consent. After your consent is obtained, the evaluation will begin with your child. Once they have all that data, they will determine the eligibility, and if your child does qualify for services, if they are eligible, an IEP, also known as an Individualized Education Plan, will be developed. So if your child does qualify for services, before those services begin, you will meet with the IEP team to discuss the plan for your child. It's important for you to know that the school cannot begin services until you give the okay to the plan. You have to sign a consent. So it's good for parents to remember that they are in the driver's seat. Once you consent to the plan, the school is responsible to provide services, supports, and accommodations which are laid out in the IEP for your child. If you aren't satisfied with the results of the evaluation, you can request that someone not affiliated with the school perform the evaluation. You'll hear the term least restrictive environment, or LRE. That's basically the federal law. They want the kids receiving any services they can in the same classroom as their peers as much as possible. So that would be the least restrictive environment. But if they're not being successful in that environment, then that becomes a restrictive environment, and we want to move them someplace where they can find some success. It's important to remember that what is a least restrictive environment for one student might not be for another. I did say that you're in the driver's seat for the process, but it's important to know and understand that the schools have the authority to choose how they're going to teach your child with the services, meaning they get to pick what methods to use to teach the children. So for your rights as a parent, you get to be involved in the process of making the IEP. You are also able to invite other people to attend the IEP meeting. It's important for you to know that everything regarding your child, the evaluation, the process, it will be confidential throughout everything. You also have the right to review documents regarding your child at any time. Like I said, I just want to reiterate, it's important for you to know that you have the final say. Like I said before, you have to provide consent for things to happen. So you're going to get some sort of a written notice that has to be given to you in your native language to tell you that we want to start the evaluation. You have to sign off on that to give the okay for the evaluation to happen. Then, like I said, once the IEP is drafted, you have to give consent for that to happen. In the event that you refuse to have your child evaluated, or you refuse to put in motion the IEP, but the school believes an evaluation or the IEP needs to happen in the best interest of the child, the school can invoke their right for due process. And in that case, a hearing officer will come in and look at things, and they will decide. So state assessments, your child, whether they're receiving services or not, they will be included in the state assessments. The IEP team will determine if any accommodations are necessary or if an alternative test will be offered to your child. So if your child's behavior negatively affects their own learning or the learning of their peers, a positive behavior intervention plan can be added to the IEP to help address those problems. So for discipline, your student can be suspended for up to 10 days. After that, it has to be determined whether or not the behavior that occurred is directly related to the disability. If it is not directly related to the disability, the school can proceed with further discipline, but they must still provide special education services for your child. It's also important to know that schools are not allowed to send a student home for you to deal with. They cannot deny your student lunch, and they can't call the cops without justification. If your child is determined that they no longer need services, which yippee, they will no longer be eligible to receive those services provided by the special education. And then in the event that your child graduates or turns 21, the protections or the rules put in place by the IDEA no longer work here. And so they will no longer be eligible for services provided by the school. Please know that you have access to look up your rights and things. The important thing to remember is that communication is key. Work with your IEP team to figure out a way that everybody can work together to ensure that your child is successful.